I put together a PowerPoint so you could see some of the information that we're putting out. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I'm Renee Gralowitz, peacemaker, descendant from the Brushel line, also Mohican. And I've been the Brothertown representative for the Wisconsin Department of Justice Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Task Force. And I do a lot of presentations on this. So if once Aaron gets that slide up, then I'll be good to go. So the task force consists of over 40 members, and of that 40 members, most of us are Indigenous, but we also include some legislators and law enforcement. And the first slide that I want to ensure that you see, besides the title slide, is that the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous people is not an Indigenous issue. This is a human issue that we need to keep focused on all aspects of the harm that's being done to families as well as individuals and the communities. So we do know that the majority of people who become trafficked who are trafficked throughout the United States are foster children who have aged out of the foster system. So we want to make sure that we stop blaming women for being in dangerous and harmful relationships. We stop denigrating them and saying just walk away from that relationship, and we need to focus more on teaching the boys and the men in our life to be better. Next slide, thank you. Okay, next slide. On the next slide, I want to encourage you to listen to this podcast, Stolen, The Search for Jermaine. This podcast is very painful at times to listen to, but it is really a very important podcast. You can get this free through Spotify, and it tells you the story that it's not any one person's fault, that there is something wrong with our systems, that the colonial structure that we work under and live under, there are so many broken links. So the story, The Search for Jermaine, introduces you to a law enforcement officer who is genuinely concerned and sincerely wants to work this issue. And we hear about some of the disconnect that he has and the constraints of his job, as well as the pain that's caused by the missing Jermaine. The book, Highway of Tears, it is a true story. Oh my gosh, Jessica McDermott, she writes about this highway in Canada, a highway I have driven on numerous times. And those of you who are in Northwest United States will probably have an opportunity to drive along. And in the book, this journalist documents the decades of missing and the decades of found bodies along that highway, and the failure of the law enforcement, local and provincial governments of protecting the people who live along that highway. So I encourage you, if you're interested in this issue and want more information, these are two beautiful stories. The third one is, if you haven't seen the movie Wind River, the movie, is a true depiction of a woman who was gang raped from people who worked in a man camp. Next slide, please. So the next slide talks more about how you can help. I don't need to go over all of the information, like 1 in 4 Indigenous women will have experienced domestic abuse and violence. Those figures speak for themselves and they're tragic, but I want to focus on what you can do. You and your social media, you need to help spread the word. When you see a flyer or poster come through that says this person is missing, you need to share that. You don't have to comment. You just need to share that amongst your people and your connections. If you get a call for action, if we're finally getting some legislation to move forward, the call for action will be put out, and we hope that you will indeed contact your legislators. We need to empower women. Not only are our nations should be treated as the sovereign nations we are, women should be treated as having sovereign over their bodies. Yes, go ahead, please. Next slide. I call on people to educate yourself. We have all been colonized because of the histories we've been taught in our K-12 and often college education. You need to educate yourself. Look for histories from the perspectives from non-dominant society peoples. Look for stories from Indigenous people, immigrants, Hispanic, Asian Island, Pacific Islanders. You need to learn the history from multiple perspectives. You need to believe somebody when they say, ouch, what you said hurt me. How you're talking hurts me. You need to ask if your local law enforcement have protocols on how they deal with missing calls. I've been making presentations to local police sheriffs and police departments and talking to them about missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirits. And I asked to look at their protocols. You need to demand justice for grieving families. We have families that are going to court now in Michigan, in Wyoming, and the court has stalled. One court process, the judge decided, oh, we were going to postpone this case for 2 years. They have the man who brutalized, raped, murdered his not his spouse, but his partner in front of 3 children, his 3 children, and his court case keeps being postponed. And in the meanwhile, his mother has custody of the murdered woman's 3 children. The local family from Wisconsin is still litigating to get the children to the murdered mother's family. So you need to, if you see that there is a case in your area, you need to help us demand justice and support nonprofit organizations with your time and your money. And if you don't have either, the little bit of time it takes to look at different websites, like them and share them would be really advantageous. So that's all. So thank you for your time on listening about this issue. I'm proud to represent the Brothertown on the Department of Justice Task Force. And if you have suggestions or ideas on how we can approach this, please feel free to contact me, and I'll put my contact information in the chat room. Taput ni.